This story is about Guyana's failure over the course of 20 years and now 5 presidents to find an effective solution to its solid waste problem. In this feature, I hope to provide insight into why efforts at establishing a functioning sanitary landfill and waste-to-energy project have had no success in 2 decades and counting. With a focus on the history of the Haags Bosch Sanitary Landfill, let's take a look at how the coastal population shoulder the ultimate burden from the environmental and health impacts this failure has had and is having up to present day. We'll examine whether a $1 billion out-of-court settlement made by the new APNU coalition government with BK International is in the best interest of the public, and take a look at how best we can end our run as one people with a very toxic destiny if there is no immediate intervention. Who is at fault for the toxic plume of smoke drifting into the city at dawn every morning? Is there something about Guyanese culture that condemns us to struggle with this issue? How could this all be linked to cancer rates in the country? And what does the future hold if we take the right steps now? Let's take a trip back in time and work our way forward to the present, lest we forget the lessons of the past and condemn ourselves and our children to a toxic future.
Operating this facility on the grounds of Montgomery County's waste transfer station in Durwood, Maryland, Envion simply lets waste companies bring plastic trash to them. Then they feed ground-up plastic through a hopper, like chipped bottle caps that also don't usually get recycled.
This particular product we can convert to about 80% petroleum.
Envion's strategy director, Andres Fossas, takes us to the reactor tower. There, the chopped-up plastic is filtered and melted.
And then the melted plastic goes straight into that unit there, which is our reactor. Okay. That's where the reacting process occurs.
After it cools, the light and medium weight material is processed out as oil that can be used in cars, trucks, even jets. They open up a spout to show us.
It smells like a combination of different oils.
Combination of a diesel byproduct, renewable byproduct, to a car gasoline byproduct.
The year is 1994. This is a year marked by civil war and genocide in Rwanda, the first multiracial elections in South Africa, and the opening of the Channel Tunnel. Dr. Cheddi Jagan is Guyana's 5th serving president, and just off Mandela Avenue, the Le Repentir landfill opens as an exhibition site to demonstrate the art of sanitary landfilling. It is expected to be in operation for 2 years. 1996. The year France halts nuclear testing in the Pacific, and back in Guyana, the 2-year operational time frame has elapsed for Le Repentir, but no alternative has yet been settled upon. 1997. The Prime Minister, who is sworn in as President following the death of Cheddi Jagan, serves as President for only a few months before, in a move debated to this day, the PPP hands the presidency over to Dr. Jagan's wife, and Janet Jagan is sworn in as Guyana's 6th President. At this point in the landfill timeline, a new facility is needed, and we are 1 year past the deadline. President Janet Jagan announced on August 8, 1999, that she was resigning as president because her health meant she was no longer capable of vigorous, strong leadership. She said that Finance Minister Bharat Jagdeo would be her successor. Without elections, Jagdeo was sworn in as president on August 11th of the same year. 2000, year of the millennium bug that never arrived, but garbage doesn't get viruses, it carries them. The Haags Bosch location is selected as the Le Repentir landfill swells to capacity with the help of the Inter-American Development Bank, or IDB. 2004, where Lance Armstrong wins a 6th consecutive Tour de France, and after 6 years in operation, the World Health Organization, in its solid waste sectoral analysis, concludes that in Guyana, the situation at the national level reflected the absence of any coordinated plan or program. It cited that the Le Repentir disposal site was surrounded by drainage canals and did not have lining, soil cover, or gas control. That leachate goes directly into the canals and most likely contaminates the groundwater. That's the water we drill wells to access so we can have a nice shower or cook a pot of rice. According to the IDB records, the design for Haags Bosch was finalized in December 2004, with the assumption that the construction would start in 2006 and completed no later than 2008.
Waste Cycle are the East Midlands' leading recycled wood processor. Based at our high-capacity shredding plant in Nottingham, we have significantly reduced the cost of disposing of waste wood materials by offering cost-saving recycling incentives for businesses. The Environment Agency have licensed Waste Cycle as an accredited reprocessor for processing wood packaging, from which the company produce a range of recycled wood-based materials, including animal bedding, equestrian and landscaping products. Waste Cycle offer discounted disposal prices for wood, which is segregated from other waste at source. We can also assist customers to comply with their obligations under the Environmental Protection Act. Recycling wood is an environmentally sustainable alternative which can minimise costs by avoiding rising landfill tax whilst also reducing current pollution levels.
2007, and Barajaglio, champion of the earth, is 1 year into his second term in office, having just won his first election. This is also the year the loan agreement between Guyana and the IDB was signed, 3 years after the design is completed, and 11 years after the exhibition landfill at Le Repentir was supposed to have been closed. The Haags Bosch project was now scheduled to be completed by the first quarter of 2011. The contract for the access road to the intended landfill is awarded to H. North & Sons. The access road in particular has raised many eyebrows, as it was meant to have been completed in 5 months and was designed by consultants who were also paid to last 15 years with maintenance. I will tell you more about this road later on. 2008, year of the global financial crisis, and with Le Repentir dump running 12 years past closure date, problems are starting to mount, and the Guyana Human Rights Association calls for a major medical intervention and the commissioning of a disaster response team to deal with the situation created by the mismanagement of the dump site at Le Repentir. 2009, year of the Beijing Olympics, and the toxicity in Georgetown is unrelenting. City Hall is spending $30 million a month to dispose of garbage at the dump site, citing chronic cash shortages and an inability to shore up the situation. Then Deputy Mayor Robert Williams, whilst giving commentary on a spectacular fire at the Le Repentir dump site, says that the Haags Bosch landfill will be operational in another 10 months. This would have taken us to March 2010, but Williams clearly contradicts himself in another statement where in that same year he opines that based on the numerous delays which have materialized since the approval of the IDB loan, the municipality may not be able to even utilize the site immediately, even if completed by 2010. In November 2009, BK International and Puran Brothers Waste Disposal Services, in a joint venture, entered into a contract with the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development to design, execute, and operate the works known as the Construction and Operation Services of a Haags Bosch Sanitary Landfill. Later, in defense of his poor work, BK will contend he was provided with poor designs which had to be redone, doubling the project cost. If this is so, we will see that he curiously said nothing about it for years. Minister of Local Government Kalwan Lal indicates the government's intent to build a waste-to-energy facility at this point in time. 2010. This is the year frustration with the government peaks, and even the mayor was writing to the newspaper, bemoaning the situation and his lack of control. Even activists begin to get involved in the protesting the continuance of dumping at Le Repentir, for at this point, the dump site and a large portion of the cemetery were practically one and the same. Minister of Local Government Kalwan Lal receives widespread condemnation for comments in which he wishes for a health crisis to break out in the city in order to prompt the dissolution of the city council, which the PPP wanted replaced. Construction finally begins at Haags Bosch in January 2010, 3 years after signing the loan agreement, and 13 years after it was meant to replace the Le Repentir site. It is reported that the government of Guyana was slow to sign the agreement because they were unhappy that the loan agreement named the Georgetown municipality as the executing agency. Even after signing the agreement, the government of Guyana refused to set up the project executing unit for a considerable period, and as a result, the IDB could disburse no funds. The project finally gets started in January. 2 months after the IDB agreed to make the Ministry of Local Government the executing agency, which meant that the administration could play a more direct role in managing the funds. While it was agreed that the construction should cost $9.7 million or 1.94 billion Guyana dollars, this was reduced to $7.7 million US or 1.5 billion Guyana dollars because of cash problems facing the ministry. So the ministry fought City Hall for control of the funds, and now $2 million US or $400 million seems to have been deducted from the allocation. By July of this year, the mayor and city council announced the closure of the Lerepentier dump site, seemingly to force the hand of the government and local government ministry, who have been promising completion at Haags Bosch. They once again bemoaned the chronic lack of resources and outlined some of the root issues facing the council in sustainability of its operations, such as garbage collection services and paying private contractors. This was a period of great misery for many Guyanese, condemned to live in the dirty fallout from a political battle of wills. By September 2010, BK and Puran brothers are still engaged in construction on site. The mayor starts to explore the option of dumping garbage on the dead in Lerepentier Cemetery as he awaits response on the completion time from the local government ministry. I do not believe it is any secret that the PPP allowed the disintegration of Georgetown, the capital of Guyana, because they saw the opposition as being in control of the mayor's office. By allowing the council to come to its knees so government could step in like a knight in shining armor, time and time again, the government had a tool. That tool, used openly, was the rhetoric that if Georgetown was in the hands of the opposition and it was filthy, the condition of the country would be much the same if they took over. I have a great many things to criticize the coalition government for, but without shadow of a doubt, Georgetown is a cleaner place since the change of administration. James McAllister reminds us in a letter to Kaitro News of just how much politics is interfering with the health of the nation at this time. We are also reminded of the ever-present threat of another fire at the Lerepentier dump because of poor soil cover and methane gas control, also cited in the WHO report as having a possible toxic health effect on residents.
The Lerepentier dump site is on fire again, and no one at City Hall could say what caused the fire. Today, 2 council workers were trying to contain the fire and seemed to be fighting a losing battle with heavy winds. Nazim Dial, a foreman at the site, explains.
It was reported that no studies were conducted by the government to determine the effect of solid waste mismanagement on the residents of the surrounding areas. None has been carried out to this day. 2011. The PPP secure another term in office, and Donald Ramatari is elected president. While toxic fires still rage at Lerepentier, the completion date for the landfill meant to deliver us all from poison is drawing near. A sum of $800 million is allocated to facilitate further works on the construction of Haags Bosch Sanitary Landfill by the then Finance Minister, Dr. Ashni Singh. So at this point, we have an $18 million loan, $9.7 million of which was supposed to go to construction. The government decreased the amount by $2 million US dollars or 400 million Guyanese dollars, citing cash shortages at the ministry, but with no explanation of where the money went, just a year ago in 2010. And now in 2011, they allocate $800 million to finish off the project through Parliament, or 4 million US. So this means construction costs went up from $9.7 million to 11.7 million US, or 1.9 to 2.3 billion Guyanese dollars. The access road meant to have been completed by H. North and Sons in 5 months is still unfinished, 4 years after being commissioned. An incomplete site is officially opened on February 1st, 2011 because the Lerepentier dump can simply take no more, and it is an election year. Garbage is now effectively being dumped on a construction site, and in May 2011, the mayor and city council cite problems paying Sivons and Purans a combined total of $70 million, and calls on the government to pay its taxes for the first quarter of the year. The politicization of environmental issues continues, and the public pay the ultimate price. From even tests conducted at the landfill in 2011, some of the trucks became stuck in the ground. We are told that the dump site, if managed according to plans, could have a life expectancy of up to 40 years, but there was still no compactor. A leachate drainage system, coupled with the daily covering of the garbage, was meant to lay any issues with bad odors and rats to rest, but there was still no proper leachate drainage system in place.
Finding a suitable site for a landfill can be complex. Landfill operators will work with regulators to be sure the new facility is located in the right place. Some places, like properties near wetlands, will be carefully evaluated for any environmental concerns. Impacts on nearby traffic will be analyzed. The site will also be evaluated to understand the land, groundwater, and surface water in the vicinity. Community feedback is important to consider, and meeting environmental and land use standards are a must. Once the site is approved by the regulator, the first step is to follow permit plans for sound construction. The second step is to secure the base of the landfill to provide a stable base for the liner. A two-phase composite liner is installed on the base and sides of the landfill. Leachate, a natural occurrence when waste is in contact with water, is collected through a system of drains, pumps, pipes, and hoses that move leachate away from the landfill. The leachate collection system will act as an effective biological filter by removing excess moisture from the bottom of the landfill. A groundwater monitoring system is installed to ensure the landfill does not impact groundwater at the site. The monitoring system acts as an alert in case additional measures may be needed to protect neighboring properties. Groundwater quality is protected at all times. Access to the site is carefully controlled for safety, and waste is screened by appropriateness as required. The landfill is ready to receive waste that has not been recycled. Equipment compacts the waste each day before daily cover, soil or tarps, is placed to avoid potential littering and odor. Gas wells are installed to capture methane generated by the waste. Once full, the landfill is covered with a cover system approved by the regulator. Groundwater continues to be monitored, and methane gas is collected and destroyed or turned into energy or fuel. When the landfill stops accepting waste, regulators will approve its closure and will monitor its safety for 30 years or as required by the regulators. Then, controls will be put in place to keep the property secure for the future. The property surrounding a closed landfill can be used for commercial or industrial use. But commonly, the property is used for green space, suitable for recreation or habitat conservation. We strongly support wildlife habitat conservation at our landfills through our partnership with the Wildlife Habitat Council.
The facility, meant to be jointly managed by BK International and Puran Brothers for 10 years, was to allow for normal dumping, but there were plans for a sorting bay, which would see all types of garbage being sorted into metals, boards, tins, bottles, etc. The site engineer expressed confidence that eventually nothing would be wasted at the site with a planned recycling system and fertilizers from the food being dumped made into compost. Great idea. Already, construction had started on the leachate plant with an administration building also going up. To date, I cannot show you evidence of either a sorting facility, the laying of ground cover, or even a leachate plant. But as you will see, we weren't done giving BK and Puran's brothers money. By December of its opening year, Haags Bosch had claimed its first life, as a porter found himself crushed to death by a garbage truck, raising concerns about health and safety on site. The sole breadwinner for his family, he left behind a wife and 10 children, with conflicting reports about how he met his end. 4 years later, in 2015, his widow still seeks answers and closure on his death and is yet to receive any form of compensation from his employers, Sewage Waste, who also failed in their duty to report the death, amounting to an immediate breach of the Occupational Health and Safety Act. The Ministry of Labour signals their intent to prosecute Sewage, but the case is quietly laid to rest. In December 2012, an article surfaces in Kaitro News citing further delays to completion, with only half of the money having been disbursed by the IDB, with 8 months to go and the loan about to expire. In this piece, we are also given some understanding as to why the supervisory mechanisms of state continue to fail in their duties. The supervision of the landfill operations was placed under the Ministry of Public Works, with the respected engineer Walter Willis as project manager. Under the contract, BK International had an obligation to monitor the environment and submit reports to the unit in a timely manner. These include results of analysis of all data collected on leachate, groundwater, surface water, and landfill gas to ensure the safety of the site. As project manager, Willis stated that he had a duty to report the progress of the work of the contractor to ensure compliance with the terms and conditions of the contract, and to report to the persons named in his letter who have a likely duty to do the same. Willis contended that the contractor failed to observe the groundwater leachate monitoring daily, monthly, quarterly, and annually. Failure to monitor levels of toxic sludge that could pollute the drinking water for 300,000 people on a job you're collecting billions of dollars for would get you locked up in most places. In Guyana, BK sued the supervisor for $200 million for his report, and Walter Willis, the guy looking out for us, was removed from the project. BK continued to be awarded large contracts. Local government minister at the time, Norman Whitaker, forgetting there were only 2 contractors attached to the project, said that somewhere along the line, some or most of the stakeholders have been failing to deliver on aspects of the project, but did not name any of the parties that were guilty for the delay. The IDB seemed cautious with their response at this stage. The bank was pleased that the Guyana government saw the need to prioritize the issues and challenges affecting the closure of the project. A representative related that the issue had been a concern in light of the fact that just under half of the resources for the project remained undisbursed. If you take out a loan for billions of dollars in someone else's name to build something that should take 5 years, and you only start paying attention in the last 8 months, with more than half of the work left to be done, and you hold no one accountable, then I say something smells fishy. Already 5 years late, August 13th, 2013 is given as the new date for completion. Less than half the work done means dumping in unfinished cells. It means no proper leachate ponds, no operational compactor to increase the lifespan of each cell, and no waste-to-energy plant as promised, with which to generate revenue to ensure the sustainability of the site without further burdening the taxpayer with debt. It also meant that they would have to find money from somewhere or someone. The minister within the Ministry of Finance, Juan Edgel at the time, stated that the time is coming when there is no more money in the loan. So this will have to be a cost carried by the people of Guyana, end quote. Well, look at that. 2013. We are reminded in this year of the existence of other landfill sites turned dumps across the country. And see, this is not a problem just within the Georgetown municipality, but with the state mechanism for dealing with the issue. The government's new approach to solid waste management at this stage saw private garbage collectors collecting residential garbage and transporting it to designated sites. One of the private contractors that came under fire was Puran Brothers. One regional chairman cited the contractor as not having followed the procedures set out, for dumping instead of operating a proper landfill, and for having influenced residents to do much the same. In 2013, Haags Bosch claims another life. This time a former BK International employee, Stewartville resident Lemuel Lynch, after drowning in a pond on the dump site. As with the Sevons employee who died on site from a crushed skull and chest after being run over, Mr. Lynch, only 23 years old at the time, left behind a family of 6, who also alleged callous treatment and a lack of information being forthcoming from BK about his death. This death is also shrouded in even more secrecy than the last, and whilst Sevons faced threat of legal action from the Ministry of Labour over the death in 2011, it seemed the same was not the case for BK. 2 families still await justice, and one might wonder at the fact Mr. Lynch is described as a former employee of BK, but drowns in a pond on a site being managed by BK and Purans. These companies have a mandate to provide security for the site, so how does he end up wandering into a pond, especially if he can't swim? In August 2013, The poor management of the landfill results in the very same discomfort faced by the residents surrounding the Le Repentier dump, having been transferred to the residents of Eccles, among them new homeowners under the government scheme. There is still neither a compactor present, nor is there the daily earth cover required to ensure the smell is not an issue at this point. Whilst BK and Purans were allowed to remove earth from the site to conduct sea defense work, no doubt part of another contract, it seems they were unable to find the earth required to do the task at hand. Residents complain about the smell of old moldy garbage filling their houses day and night, dependent on the wind direction. In 2014, a compactor valued at $90 million was procured by the government in accordance with their obligation to extend the life of the dump site cells by properly compressing the garbage. Without proper compaction, the life of each cell was set to be drastically reduced. The government at this point refuses to hand the equipment over to BK because of a squabble over maintenance. The very expensive machine has a maintenance contract with a foreign company, but BK insists on using his own engineer for servicing of the machine. This problem goes unresolved for 2 years, whilst uncompacted, unsorted garbage continues to be dumped. 2015. At the beginning of 2015, the PPP gave BK a late Valentine's Day present and terminated his contract for construction and management of the Haags Bosch dump. They refused to pay any more money and said that the company missed deadlines and committed other breaches, which led to the termination. On March 13, 2015, 2 months before the May general elections in which the PPP lost to the APNU coalition, BK filed a lawsuit asking Chief Justice Ian Chang to overturn the termination of his contract on the grounds the move was arbitrary and illegal. A few months later, David Granger is sworn in as the president of Guyana, and the saga continues. Tiwari in his court documents had stated that the company constructed cells, roadways, administrative offices, a canteen and workshop, and a scale. He claimed to employ 50 persons and managed to process 140,000 tons of waste annually. He alleged that the ministry started delaying payments to BK despite invoices being submitted and letters of demand being written, and that as of July 23, 2013, the ministry owed BK some $64 million for work done since 2012. BK also files claims against the ministry for breaches in the contract for another $1.6 billion, but settles in this instance for around $300 million. Chang rules in favor of BK. Remember that access road H. North and Sons were awarded to construct that was supposed to take 5 months back in 2007? After 8 years, the new administration found themselves walking into office with the road only 75% complete, with absolutely no penalty leveled on the contractor. They were literally allowed to ride off into the sunset, like so many others, even Brian Tiwari, owner of BK International, who himself had come under scathing criticism for his part in the delays, found himself able to deflect attention from his own poor work by using H. North as an example, pointing to the state of the road but forgetting his vehicles played a part in the destruction of the parts which were completed. According to a government spokesperson, there was additional stress on the road. At the inception of the contract, BK International, in association with Puran Brothers, requested of the ministry to use some of the clay on the road for sea defense. The request was granted, but the trucks used by BK International damaged the road. He also related that even some of the large trucks from Baishan Lin and BK International were carrying somewhere between 40,000 and 45,000 tons, loads the road was not designed to support. In July of 2015, Puran Brothers Waste Disposal did something amazing, and in a published statement claimed they had never been part of the construction and operations of the Haags Bosch Sanitary Landfill. They admitted that their company had participated in a joint venture arrangement with BK International, but also claimed that while it was preparing to perform its role in the operations, it was unfortunately barred from all aspects of the project by the leading partner, BK International. Puran stated that it would not be held responsible for any worksite accidents with resulting injuries or death, any negative environmental impact, or any form of mismanagement, pertaining to the operations of the landfill. In closing, they leave the door open by saying in spite of their exclusion from the execution of the contract, they were ready to perform all necessary remedial works and take on the day-to-day operations of the facility. In December 2015, we see the headline, "Rats are on the rampage where I live," but not from a resident of Georgetown, but of Eccles, where the brand new multi-billion-dollar landfill has been located with a buffer zone, indicating clearly that we have simply moved a really big problem and failed to find a solution. The writer and resident of the area informs us of the rat infestation, but also raises serious questions about the IDB's motives in funding such a badly mismanaged project for such a long time. In time for the New Year celebrations, the poor management of the landfill, which was operated as a dump from day one, finally came to a head, and the dump site erupts in flames. The Ministry of Communities squarely places the blame at the feet of solid waste collectors, BK International and Puran Brothers Disposal Services, for the uncontained blaze due to an unventilated landfill, the failure to provide daily earth cover, which in turn contributed to the significant buildup of methane. This in turn ignited, burning through tons of garbage and coating the city in toxic residue. Remember this, they held both parties responsible. A press release from the ministry cites evidence of poor management techniques and inadequate security measures. The release also noted that during the initial stages of the fire, the contractor received assistance from the Guyana Fire Service, which requested the contractors to provide, in accordance with the conditions of the contract, additional resources needed to enhance their capacity to control the blaze. These included 3 high-capacity pumps, 2 heavy-duty cranes, a dragline or long boom excavator to dig to the bottom of the waste pile in an effort to reach the fire, and water hoses. The statement outlined that despite numerous engagement with the assigned contractor for the supply of the items, which was outlined in the contract, things were delayed. This hampered the Guyana Fire Service's ability to arrest the fire. Welcome to Guyana, land of commissions of inquiry, reports, and press releases, but where no one ever seems to be penalized, and so it was. We still found more money to give to BK and Puran's brothers. By February of the year 2016, we are really given a clue as to how serious conditions at the multi-billion-dollar landfill have become. The report states Puran's brothers were temporarily contracted to manage Haags Bosch Landfill after the contract was taken back from BK International. Yes, the same Puran brothers that were contracted to build the unfinished landfill with BK, that shared responsibility for the Le Repentir-esque fire, which consumed the dump only 2 months prior. By April of 2016, the new government was paying BK an out-of-court settlement worth $1.2 billion. The payment was justified, saying that under the arrangements, BK was supposed to be paid for every ton of waste he processed on the 100-acre facility. Also in April, bids were invited to rehabilitate the Haags Bosch access road, which was to be constructed by H. North & Sons within 5 months back in 2009. That was designed to last 15 years and was still only 75% complete half a decade later. H. North, having faced no penalty the first time round, bid to rehabilitate their own sloppy work in the hopes of securing another $8 to $5 million from the state. In June, residents of the surrounding communities beyond the buffer zone complain of the persistence of the stench and smoke from the Haags Bosch dump site, making their lives miserable. The Ministry of Communities claims it is about to start work fixing the site again, and bemoans the fact that the work done has been so poor the IDB threatened to withdraw funding from the project. Gordon Gilks, project director of the Georgetown Solid Waste Management Program, identified several of the non-compliant items related to operations. It was noted that these items included the absence of a leachate treatment abatement lagoon, a landfill gas management system, and the application of daily cover to the landfill. In addition, soil excavated from several locations on site intended for use as daily cover was diverted to another location. These were the lagoons and gas management systems BK and Purans were supposed to have been working on 6 years ago. In July, the Ministry of Communities had signed a $221 million one-year contract with none other than Pooran's brothers to manage the site after the departure of BK International. The ministry said that Pooran's was found to be the most suitable. Wow. The luxury of being contracted to clean up your own mess. Pooran's bid came in at 32% less than the engineer's estimate, which caused another rival bidder, Sevon's Waste, to file a complaint, citing it was impossible for Pooran's to make a profit if their estimate fell that short of the engineer's. In addition, it seems years of involvement in the site were simply forgiven on the basis of Pooran's press release, washing their hands of the project, having said nothing before. Ours is a forgiving government. At the signing of the contract, Gordon Jilt, head of the Sanitation Department, informs us that the $90 million compactor procured by the last administration in 2014 was to be handed over to Pooran so that proper management of the site could finally commence. Many months later, and the compactor still sits idle. Anil Nandlal, former Attorney General, now in opposition, makes known his own party's position on the billion-dollar settlement with BK. He notes that the case has just been filed, there was no trial, and no evidence was heard. Additionally, he questions how the government could have proof of substandard work, as we all do now, and still fear losing. We are reminded that after the PPP cancelled the BK's contract, he filed a lawsuit challenging the termination, and after coming into office, the Ministry of Communities and the Ministry of Public Infrastructure delivered scathing criticism on the management of the site by BK, yet it is most odd they choose not to go to court with the evidence and instead settle for something out of court. The former Attorney General contended that he could not come up with a legal reason why the government should have moved to settle out of court, as BK was in breach of its contract since 2013. Even after calls to the company for rectification of several of the breaches and meetings were held, some chaired by the president, BK were not in compliance. He recalls the situation got so bad that the funding agency, the IDB, said it would no longer fund the project and questions the coalition decision not to sue the contractor for substandard work, but instead reward him with over $1 billion for the same shoddy work they complained about when in opposition. Government offers fear of losing the court battle as reason for the payment, but this does not sit well with either the opposition or large sections of civil society, and even many coalition supporters, given public knowledge of BK's work and reputation. The settlement is seen as fundamentally corrupt. Nandlal questions why the current Attorney General, Basil Williams, would tell Parliament in one breath that the Haags Bosch dump was affecting 26,000 people, then in another suddenly choose to pursue an out-of-court settlement. Former President Donald Ramotar also weighs in on the transaction, accusing BK of not only being dishonest, but of fraud, non-fulfillment of obligations on past projects, and of usurping power and making an absolute mess of the Haags Bosch. The former president notes that when he arrived in office, he was made aware of BK's shady ways, but this all seems odd to real Guyana, because BK was one of the PPP's contractors of choice, and given the number of projects he has delivered substandard work on, one might hazard a guess the PPP only parted ways with him on this project at the IDB's insistence. It also makes me wonder why the administration chose to pour billions of dollars in the direction of a man they believe to be dishonest and sloppy. It makes one wonder what magical powers this man must possess, that even the new government, once his biggest critics, have come to reward him so handsomely for almost a decade of poor quality work and site management, having broken so many contractual obligations. Whilst the case against Pooran's with the bid protest committee is under investigation, Pooran's was ordered by the Sanitation Department to stop accepting tires and metals. With a looming ban on used tires set to roll out across the country and massive stockpiles of it, no alternative was suggested for those with tires and metal to dispose of, and no explanation as to why, because Pooran clearly states they're willing to accept everything. Fly with me now to the village of Zeelat on the west coast of the Demerara River. where I want to show you why it is so important we dispose of tires properly. Then I want to show you why this directive makes no sense. Look at this. It's been burning for a little while now. Just spreading toxins and pollutants all over the place. What is going on here? All that stuff down there, indeed there are a lot of tires in there, many tires. There's a local dump that's basically polluting, I gotta say, the coast now, just from those tires. That's just gonna go up in the air. It's raining down in town. It's gonna be raining up here just now. It's gonna go up. All those toxic chemicals are gonna basically blow up into the air and settle on people's roofs, get into your water tank, contaminate our drinking water supply, get into our rivers, interact with our fish that we like to eat. If you like freshwater fish, it falls on the grass that the cows eat. It falls on the rice that we're gonna harvest, the sugarcane that we're burning. I mean, we're literally polluting the entire food chain when we allow acts like this to go on. And I hope that the aerial footage has given you some extra perspective on why something like this is just so disturbing, and the fact it continues. I don't know what more to say, but as you can see, not a soul has shown up to find out what that fire is. If the government is serious about its own plans for a waste-to-energy facility, then it should be stockpiling all used tires it can get right now, and you'll see why in a minute. Here we are at the first bridge. I mean, starting with the road, oh my goodness, let me just take you on the carousel of dreams that is this journey. Starting with the road, this place looks terrible, and you definitely know we enter in here now. This is Haags Bosch Sanitary Landfill. Let's stop and take a picture. And let's see how close we can get. Scrap metal down there. How's it down there? Haags Bosch. No smoking, lighting of fires, no animals. Definitely not an animal. Might fool some people. There's some tarmac that's been dug up here. Some workers. What's going on, brothers? Hi, good afternoon. How far in is the dump site? You gotta drive up? Yeah. I got place to turn back? Yeah. Alright, thanks, brother. So, let's see what we got going on down here. This is at the beginning of the dump. Some of the garbage trucks coming back here. Just gonna go see if I can have a up close look. Good God. Whoa. You won't believe the road is bad. Oh, you gotta, whew, the smell is follow. What a beast. So after the closure of the Mandela dump site, this was supposed to replace that, okay? Got a security check here in case I come to steal some garbage. Hello, good morning. How are you? Just come to survey the site.
And who am I speaking with?
My name is Francis Bailey.
From where?
Real Guyana. I run a channel online called Real Guyana.
Real Guyana?
Yeah, that's
some
correct.
sort of ID?
Oh yeah? Let me do this again.
You're running a what?
It's an online channel.
See what you're doing with this? You're exposing me to the outside world?
Not exposing, I come to survey the works. $1 billion was spent down here.
By?
So, by the government. They just paid $1 billion for this stuff here, and we spend a lot more money on that, like billions of dollars before that. So I just come to have a look at the site.
This doesn't prove anything, do you know, man?
Oh no, that's...
You have a better ID card. Nobody's allowed.
This is my passport.
I know that's your passport, but
yes.
your job-wise in taking out photograph of this place. You
oh
don't have...
no, this is it a private site or is this a public site? Could you
this
confirm
is a government's place.
Oh, this is public. I'm a citizen. I've just verified for you with my passport, my identification. And I'm seeking entry. I'm not here to steal any garbage.
First, because
Who's
I don't
your
think it's
authority?
anybody. My bosses. I'll call
Who are
them.
your bosses?
Who runs?
Who runs?
I'll just tell them that somebody's in here to take out some photograph.
Great.
To be this photograph be online.
Yeah.
They say the citizens of Guyana, they're entitled to that.
Yeah.
Let me hear what they have to say.
Great. Because it's a public facility. Purans can't actually bar me from entering. Unless I'm here to steal garbage.
Yeah.
Let's wait for this call. And some confirmation I can go in. You can see the guy works for Puran.
I just called my senior here, right?
Yeah.
And they're not allowing anybody to go here right now.
Oh, you mean they're not allowing anyone right now? So I can't physically walk onto the site?
So, let me talk to much more senior people.
So the senior person you spoke to
no,
said nobody,
supervisor.
They don't want any camera people taking pictures of this.
I don't know the reason behind that, but...
Well, there's a reason enough to go and see.
Hi, Mr. Callis. Hi, Gregory here from Dumpside. I'm having an individual here. All he has is his passport and he has a big camera and he said he'd like to go take out some photograph to put online.
All he has is a passport. Hi there. Seeing checking back if you were able to talk to Mr. Rufus and maybe...
I give you his number. Did you try?
Yes, I tried. I was unable. No, I was unable to get through to it.
You'll have to see. You will have to consult with the Ministry of Community.
Ministry of Communities. Or Mr. Rufus.
Or a man by the name of Mr.
Country. To see the dump site.
Pardon me?
To see the dump site.
He's presently not here.
But you know, people could smell the dump site from where they live in, so you could smell it, but you can't come here to inspect the works.
Well, I don't know, but this is the hardest I get.
And you know, IDB funded this to the tune of like 18 million US, but taxpayers' money is, you know, paying for it right now. You don't think we should be able to assess works and...
All I share with them, and they tell me, you have to consult with the people, with the Ministry of...
So the Ministry of Communities.
Or Mr. Rufus.
Okay, but they don't want nobody here with cameras.
No, you have to get authorization to go in and do that.
To see this place. But look, they have a nice fancy car up there. Did he have authorization? I got a fancy SUV down there.
So you police me now?
No, I'm not policing you at all. I'm asking you.
Why are you asking a question about a customer's vehicle?
Oh, it's a customer? So what if I had garbage to dump here?
You're going and dump your garbage.
I saw on the website it's open
you told me you're not here, you're here to film,
I'm here to film.
And I share that with my
so I'm here to film garbage.
No, but as I told you already, simple English language, Ministry of
I know English, but are you you protecting the privacy of the garbage?
I'm protecting what the boss tells me to do.
What the boss tells you to do. And you happy? You happy with that?
You want to be argumentative?
I'm not argumentative. I'm engaging you in debate.
That you have to see the Ministry of Community and Mr. Rufus. I give you Mr. Rufus now.
Mr. Rufus is not picking up his phone. Well, have a lovely day.
Yeah, you too.
Okay. I'll turn around here if you don't mind. Okay, well, they obviously don't want anybody up in her. Let's take a look at a country like Sweden. While you could safely say 99% of the garbage in Guyana that doesn't end up here, or here, or here, or here, ends up in a landfill. The reverse is true in Sweden. The Swedes are so good at recycling that only 1% of their trash ends up in the dump. Much of their trash is converted to energy. So much so, 8.5% of the country's electricity needs are provided by waste-to-energy plants, and the country even finds itself importing up to 700,000 pounds of garbage annually from its neighbors, because pound for pound, trash has about a third of the energy you would get burning fossil fuels. Not only can you get energy from burning trash in a controlled manner, using heat to drive steam turbines, but landfills also produce a tremendous amount of methane gas, which can be tapped. This comes from the decaying organic matter and can be captured and put to work, generating more energy and even cooking gas.
Unfortunately, many of the traditional ways of disposing of this waste such as incinerators and landfills, are costly, unhealthy, and degrade the environment. Decaying garbage pollutes the soil and water and releases methane into the atmosphere, which contributes to global warming. But now an affordable and integrated green technology has emerged. One that creates wealth and energy from the waste and preserves the beauty of the land. This resource recovery center in Selangor, Malaysia, processes 700 tons of waste per day using integrated technology developed by CCSB, Core Competencies Sendirian Berhad. The technology incorporates a series of mechanical, biological, and thermal processes to recover around 80% of commingled municipal waste. Once the waste arrives at the center, the leachate is drained from the raw garbage and channeled to a biological treatment plant. This produces Class A water, which is used to keep the plant clean and is safe to discharge into the environment. The waste then goes through a series of mechanical sorting, drying, and enzyme treatments to sanitize the waste and enable maximum recovery of reusable items. High calorific waste is made into RDF, refuse-derived fuel, that can be safely used as a replacement fuel for steam turbines, cement kilns, and industrial furnaces. CCSB have worked with the Malaysian Nuclear Agency, who steered the R&D towards maximum efficiency at minimum cost.
The entire management, the assembly, the majority of the components of the system is made here, so we managed to bring down the cost. Let's say 30–40% of the country adopted this technology. So it is a huge saving already to the government.
CCSB raised their own capital to develop the technology and build the plant at zero cost to the government. And because this approach to waste management reduces the need for landfills, local authorities save on land acquisition, waste transportation, and landfill maintenance and closure. The revenue from recycled materials and the RDF keeps operating costs at an affordable level. Some of the RDF is converted to energy at the on-site power plant, which reduces costs further. The surplus power creates revenue as it's sold to the nation under a renewable energy purchase agreement. CCSB have now adapted their technology to convert old waste into assets. By mining old landfills, they are able to produce RDF as well as recovering the same types of reusable items for recycling that they recover at the plant from the fresh waste. Integrated resource recovery technology is an effective and economically viable approach to waste management. At the same time, it also provides a range of cost-free benefits that enhance the quality of life.
So by introducing this new technology whereby garbage is not thrown into the land, instead being processed and in a more hygienic manner, so that by doing this, of course, we can improve the public health situations, the environmental situation, the water pollutions, the air pollution will be tremendously reduced and put under control. It's very good for everybody, for the environment.
The waste to wealth approach reduces global warming by eliminating landfill methane from the environment. It provides industry with an alternative and renewable fuel source. Its flexibility means it can keep pace with national growth and development. It can be adapted to work within a broad range of waste profile parameters. It's financially sustainable, and it cleans up and conserves the environment.
For a country with such a large energy import bill, where for decades we have identified high electricity prices as an obstacle which must be surmounted in order for Guyana to have a globally competitive manufacturing sector, you might wonder why we have no such facility. It's not that we haven't tried. In 2013, I was contacted by a Canadian looking to set up a waste-to-energy and recycling plant in Guyana. He asked me to direct him to the relevant ministers in the PPP government at the time, having learned of Guyana's problems through the Real Guyana channel, and I was too happy to assist. But only weeks after making contact with the government, it seems things went south. Shortly after learning of a new money-making scheme, it seems the government sidelined the recycling company and announced their own grant scheme with their own Canadian investor, who allegedly or accidentally let the cat out of the bag that an investment of $15 million was to be made by a minister's daughter. Many eyes suddenly turned in the direction of the project, and it was hastily scrapped, leaving Guyana back at square one with no means of recycling much apart from cardboard. Whilst I started this analysis with the construction and management of the Haags Bosch site by BK and Puran brothers, with focus on the toxic mother load being spread in the city 24/7, 365, at some point I started wondering if all this poor work was indicative of a wider social ill. Is pollution and polluting without regard for the environment and others a culture in Guyana? The answer is sadly a resounding yes, and it can be the only answer to the question of how the contractor that built the dump, the contractor that manages it, and the state that are supposed to be providing oversight all seem oblivious to the crime taking place right under, and dare I say, in our noses. Ours is a problem that has its genesis in poor garbage collection services as you go farther away from the capital. It stems from the fact many grow up in a situation where open dumping and burning in backyards on the side of the road and even next to our waterways is a fact of life, and one that is not commonly penalized by any instrument of the state. It wasn't always this way, but so much has broken down in Guyana, most of all our enforcement mechanisms. Despite signing on to the Environmental Protection Act of, I believe, 1990, and having an environmental protection agency, I have never seen or heard of a fine being issued for burning, for polluting, or for putting the health of others at risk in the way that is so commonly seen around Guyana. In neighborhood democratic councils with little to no garbage collection, residents are left with little alternative than to burn their garbage. Even though, as this graphic bemoans, garbage is far more toxic than it was in the 1950s, but we have not evolved with the times. And in recent years, City Hall has even been cited as asking people to bury their garbage as a means of enriching their soil. Not only is there little alternative, but for decades there has been very little guidance on correct ways to dispose of refuse or prosecution for those who break the law. And this, of all things, catalyzed and maintains our collective regression from the garden city to the garbage city. This could only lead to a state of lawlessness and disregard for the environment, and this is where we are today. When nothing is actively done to prevent dumping and penalize offenders, we enter a situation where even a no dumping sign becomes ironic, because by implication, supported by the existence of a weak and oft disinterested enforcement apparatus, people are really being told, just don't dump here, please. If you are caught dumping here, you will be prosecuted. Just dump somewhere else and nothing will happen. It doesn't need to be said explicitly or written on a wall. Folks just seem to understand the subverted logic intuitively and comply. Added to this is a concept I'd like to introduce called the tragedy of the commons. When the video is over, you can read more about it by following the links in the video description, but I'd like to reference it here. The tragedy of the commons refers to a phenomenon where a group of people, each acting in their own self-interest, can degrade the environment and common spaces they all share. It's like dumping waste oil in a canal to save yourself time and money, disposing of it properly. But your selfish action has a knock-on effect on the fish population and the amount of toxins in the fish pulled out of the canal later that day by someone who would like to enjoy the canal for fishing. It is being too lazy to find a bin and throwing your rubbish on the ground, thus ruining the beautiful scene for the next person that comes along. In the Guyana of today, the tragedy of the commons defines our present condition, but we still have the power to determine our collective future. It manifests itself in the contractors and homeowners who, instead of taking their building waste to dump sites or paying for collection, throw the waste in empty lots, at the sides of the road, in potholes, in drains, and on parapets. It manifests when ordinary people set light to poisonous plastics and chemical-laden materials, making sure it's downwind of their house, and pollute the entire neighborhood because waiting for collection day is too much. You may wonder why I'm going into this now if BK and the government are the ones who are under the spotlight, and dare I say Purans. But I say to you, that even as it does us well to hold our leaders accountable, we do an even greater service when we are able to hold ourselves accountable. In this particular instance, I hope that people who do burn garbage, and yes, this is a problem in rural communities, even in the US, understand the damaging long-term health effects to which they are exposing themselves, loved ones, and neighbors. To the state administrators, I would recommend consideration of just how effective any anti-littering campaign or no dumping initiative can be when so many lack reliable means to dispose of their refuse, and there exists no recycling facility or drive to change the situation. To the enforcement mechanisms which are supposed to exist, I can only ask that you come out of hiding and be bold in execution of your duties. Long ago, I am told in tales of Guyana, there was someone who went around on community inspections with the job description of the sanitary. I was told that this person's job was to go around making sure your environment was wholesome, and I was shown a card that the sanitary would sign to say you were doing your bit and you were doing it well. This card hasn't been signed in almost 30 years, which tempts me to ask, what happened to that job? What happened to so many others? Being derelict of responsibility to police corrupt institutions is one thing, but failure to ensure things as basic public health is another entirely. Once the human resource pool is poisoned, as in they poison and are poisoned by each other with no intervention, rather support from the state by way of lax enforcement, who is going to be left to police or change anything, I wonder? My tone may come across as a bit dark, but consider the fact that burning something like PVC releases dioxin, a known potent human carcinogen and endocrine disruptor. Dioxin can have significant impacts on human immune, developmental, and reproductive systems. Dioxin is especially harmful for children, pregnant women, and the elderly. Who is looking out for these people? If you are in a position where you have to burn garbage, please seriously consider ways of separating your waste by having separate bags for plastic and organic waste. Find ways to upcycle or get your plastic to a landfill where under ideal circumstances it will not be burnt unless in a waste-to-energy plant. Advocate for those ideal circumstances. Your health is at stake. Educate the people around you about the poisons released when garbage is burnt and let them know that they could be increasing the cancer risk of the persons breathing in the fumes up to 10,000 times. Real Guyana has a close friend that at the age of 27 is now recovering from stage 3 breast cancer. So do believe me, this warning is as real as it gets. When all these pollutants go up into the air, we must realize there is no such place as away. Take a look at this rainstorm. What goes up must come down. And I only wonder about the long-term health effects that will be faced by thousands of Guyanese after decades of having pollutants and toxins like this suspended in the environment, raining down on their roofs and into their storage tanks that we use to bathe and shower and feed ourselves and sustain our daily lives. I can only wonder at the health effects that we face if this is allowed to continue. Let's move the conversation forward to the second group of offenders on the pollution ladder, worthy of mention again before we move up to the big Bosch. What happens if you grew up in an environment where your household dumping and burning is tolerated, or where for much of your life you haven't seen any move by your local council to provide adequate collection services? What happens if you take that mindset and open a business that makes household waste you generate and burn as a kid look like a drop in the ocean? What kind of effect does an attitude like this have on an environment when exhibited by multiple individuals across multiple sectors in different parts of the country? There are answers to all of these questions, as this particular issue I have documented ad nauseum, but be in no doubt, the greatest threats to the restoration of the Garden City and the aesthetic enhancement of the populated areas of Guyana as a whole are errant businesses and contractors, with the latter truly having embarked on an uglification initiative of epic proportions that has quite frankly killed the view. Until scenes like this, where dangerous construction debris and waste are allowed to be collected and set alight, until this becomes a thing of the past, supported by an equipped and professional enforcement apparatus where Article 25 of the Constitution or 2701 of the Local Government Act and the Environmental Protection Act are taken seriously, change will not come to Guyana. Until then, we shall continue both giving and receiving the gift of pollution, the gift of cancer, and the gift of chronic respiratory illness, like the most morbid Secret Santa you ever played, only this is no secret. Guys, you're not even gonna believe me. You're not even gonna believe what I'm about to show you. We're not far from the Coast Guard. That's the Marriott Hotel in the distance. And this is an open dump with burning rubbish and tires. Good God. Like seriously. Like $12 billion we spent on this site. $12 billion. Unbelievable. Here are some of my own thoughts. If after 20 years and 5 presidents, we still can't get this right, then I truly wonder if all hope is lost. But I am an eternal optimist. First, read the Constitution and note the responsibility to protect our environment is enshrined within it. BK should be sued by the government for the standard of work presented and the numerous documented cases where contractual obligations have been breached. Puran brothers should also be included in the lawsuit unless they can find irrefutable evidence to support their claim of being totally excluded from all aspects of the project and not having collected money. If so, the project managers must answer the question as to how one contractor was allowed to usurp total power and continue receiving funding. In a functioning country, people delivering work like this, with a $4 billion price tag, would not even be allowed to pick up a shovel. How is it possible they continue to get work in Guyana? This is a question we must pay serious attention to. Fix the site infrastructure. That's the next thought that keeps coming into my head. Clear all the garbage from the roads and set up CCTV monitoring to catch offenders, and restore the clean lines, which indicate order and some amount of organization. The PPP and now Coalition need to answer the question of why folks like H North can get away with millions of dollars we will have to pay back. Where is the leachate treatment plant or the sorting plant promised? Why is there no waste to energy facility? How long will the coalition wait before rectifying many of the problems they so vigorously criticized from the other side of the bench? With a lavish salary and 50% salary increase, I hope the new administration have not forgotten the people they swore to protect. Is this not the same poisoned air that gets sucked into air conditioners of the wealthy? Before we can get to a place where a situation like this is unthinkable, the state must first be willing to enforce the law in an equitable manner. What we see today is the more money one has, the less likely one is to face any charges for anything. Nothing has visibly changed from one administration to the next in this regard. But what tone do we set for society when the powerful are able to use the government we elected to serve our needs like their servants? It sets a really bad tone, and there is much evidence of the music. What happens in the end is what we can also see now. The contractors end up having absolutely no respect for the taxpayers they rob because they believe the politicians are in their pocket, and I won't deny some may well be. In an environment with such lax regulation and enforcement, the rich know they are untouchable. Our leaders focus on their own comfort, and we who have to pay for it all watch on in horror. Are we any better off today than we were 10 years ago? What did we get for all those billions? Even after collecting another $221 million from the state, after such a terrible job at construction and maintenance, Puran Brothers, months after signing a new contract as sole manager of the dump site, has the compactor we took a loan of $90 million to pay for sitting idle. Oil is disposed of on site right into our waterways, the Conservancy bringing water to Georgetown, being only a few miles away to the east, And I truly wonder why we are not doing investigations right now into groundwater flow at the site and determining the extent to which the surrounding environment is being polluted on an ongoing basis. What impact is this having on our health? What impact is it having on our food? Can we all look at this and agree toxic fumes don't target supporters of any particular party, and this is an issue we all need to work together on for a swift resolution? How can President Granger claim to be in support of a green economy? How could Bharat Jagdeo become champion of the earth under these conditions? I really don't have all the answers, but I do know it's the coalition's turn at the stump, and that David Granger has a chance to go down in history as the president that did what 4 others in 20 years couldn't by overseeing the restoration of our environment, or go down as another leader who put themselves first as the shady, powerful and corrupt continue to savage the population with enough money to insulate them from the repercussions of any crime, even poisoning their fellow citizens through gross negligence. It is time, but I assure you, for as long as this goes on, it is truly running out. Welcome to Guyana. Real Guyana.